These folders have got over 5,000 A4 pages of text messages.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Email, a lot of phone calls.
Emily was stalked by her ex-partner for 2.5 years. She says he'd refused to leave her house when he visited their child and would often turn up unannounced.
You know, phone calls at 3 a.m. of him crying down the phone outside the house. On one occasion, after I'd moved house, I turned my Bluetooth speaker on, and the Bluetooth speaker at one point during the evening connected to his phone.
Emily is one of the 700 victims of intimate partner stalking surveyed by Women's Refuge. It's a behaviour that doesn't discriminate, with stalkers coming from all walks of life, from those in high-powered jobs to those who aren't working. A former detective says technology makes it easier to stalk, and evidence can be hard to gather. But Darren Morton believes victims shouldn't cut off contact altogether and instead limit it to one channel, like texting.
That gives them two things. One, it gives them an idea of the mental state of the offender. It will also give them evidence to present to the police.
But Women's Refuge says if victims do go to police, they often struggle. That's because they're viewed as overly paranoid and it's seen as normal to chase someone after a breakup.
If those myths are commonplace within our society, as we believe they are, then police hold them as well.
As an ex-detective, I can understand that. So what I tell all of our victims is when you go to the police, you need to be rational.
But when Emily finally plucked up the courage to go to police, she was referred to the family court instead.
I wished so many times that I hadn't been in a relationship with him and that this was a stranger, because I knew that if I went in and said, this man that I don't know is following me and stalking me and harassing me, they would have done something immediately.
The key word being stranger. Women's Refuge says right now victims of stranger stalking can access restraining orders through the Harassment Act. But that law doesn't provide scope for ex-partner stalking. Instead, victims are told to access a protection order under family violence laws. But the threshold of harm is much higher.
A restraining order would allow women to apply for an order of protection before they'd been beaten.
Because in 39% of cases, stalking is a precursor to violence. Emily was able to get a protection order, but she says the family court process was harrowing, and after just a few months was told there was no need for the order to continue.
I remember saying, how much worse does it need to be? Because he didn't murder me, but it felt like he was going to.
Justice Under Secretary Jan Logie says right now there's no plans to review the Harassment Act, but says recent changes to family violence laws cater to the psychological side of domestic abuse, like stalking.